Mr. Latour.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, we are here in 22 CRS 271171, State of North Carolina versus Arturo Marin Sotelo, ARTUROMARINSOTELO. If I may approach with the court file.
Yes, sir.
We are here today on Mr. Ferguson's motion to consider conditions of pretrial release. The defendant is present with counsel, Mr. Ferguson.
All right, Mr. Ferguson.
Yes, Your Honor.
I've reviewed this motion. It was the same motion that was filed several weeks ago, perhaps.
Yes, Your Honor.
I've reviewed the motion, but glad to hear from you, sir.
Your Honor, there's two things as I understand. There's a motion for bond hearing and a motion to compel discovery.
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to present evidence on the bond motion.
All right.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
see.
Yes, sir.
Let's get a shot call, please.
Raise your right hand and place your left hand on the Bible. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you state your name, please?
Correct, Sheriff.
And how are you employed?
Of the Wake County Sheriff's Office.
What position do you hold?
Investigator.
How long have you held the position of investigator?
Almost 3 years.
And have you played any role in this case that we're here for today?
Yes, sir. I'm the lead investigator.
And what does lead investigator mean?
It is my case of my responsibility to compile all the information given to me and work the case as I see.
And after my client was arrested, was he interviewed by law enforcement?
Yes, sir.
And were you present?
No, sir.
Have you reviewed any video of that interview?
Briefly, I've got a chance to so far, but not fully in its entirety.
Have you reviewed the search warrants that were done in this case?
Yes, sir.
You know, if I may approach.
Yes, sir.
That's marked as defendant's warrant, Your Honor. Let's go to, is it Shapcott?
Yes, sir.
Let's go to Shapcott. Do you recognize Defense Exhibit 1?
Yes, sir.
Would you turn to page 5 of the public cause affidavit? You see the paragraph that begins on Tuesday, August 16th?
Yes, sir.
Is that in the next two paragraphs what Arturo, and I'm going to refer to Arturo and Alder by the first name since they are related. Is that what your investigation has shown? Is that what your investigation has shown, that Alder and Arturo are brothers?
Yes.
And is that paragraph that begins on Tuesday, August 16th, and the next two paragraphs what Arturo told law enforcement?
May I have one?
Sure, please.
What was the question?
The question is the paragraph that begins on Tuesday, August 16th, that paragraph and the following two paragraphs, what Arturo told law enforcement after he was arrested.
That's what I was told by the investigator who was present at the interview.
And do you have any reason to dispute what's in this affidavit?
No, sir.
Did Arturo indicate that he was in an open field at the time of the shooting?
According to the stuff and from what I was told, yes.
There were about 33 search warrants that have been issued in this case, is that right?
Sounds about right.
And I believe you've executed all but one, is that correct?
I returned service.
So you returned service on all but one, is that right?
I'd have to double check on the one, but sounds about right.
Have you reviewed the affidavits that have been attached to these search warrants?
A lot of them are there's the same PC given in all of them.
During the course of your investigation, are you aware that Arturo has indicated that he was in the field at the time of the shooting?
Yes.
And prior to his arrest, the first search warrant you got was a Google warrant, is that correct?
That's I believe a Google, I believe it's a geofence. I didn't swear that one. I believe that was getting done, but yes, I believe that was the first one.
And there's a Google geofence where the search warrant is trying to determine who was in a certain radius around the scene of the crime, is that right?
Yes.
In the first search warrant, the information you get back is anonymized, isn't it?
I have not seen that information myself. I cannot testify to that.
Have you seen any of the information that's been returned from Google about who was there at the scene?
Any information from Google?
Yes.
I believe we have some records back on it. I'm not in a position where I could testify 100% definitely to seeing that. I may have glanced over it, but I can swear to anything.
Tell us how you, during your investigation, what directed you to the Alder and Arturo?
During the investigation, the FBI, technical surveillance units, they were doing their work, working the phone numbers and stuff, which I can't testify to how they do what they do or what they do, but they were the ones who identified Alder and Arturo as people of interest.
And you don't know how that happened?
I know roughly, but nothing that I can testify to. I would have to let them testify to the work they do.
Who is A. Frank?
That's Investigator Adam Frank.
And is he present in the courtroom?
I don't see him.
He's the one that signed out this warrant. Is that the probable cause affidavit? Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you know how many phones showed up in the Google search?
No, sir.
Have you reviewed any phone records from Arturo and Alder?
I've just recently started going over them personally. I know that they have been gone over by our unit who works with the phones.
Do you know of any phone calls between Alder and Arturo on the night that the bird was shot?
I'm drawing a blank whether it's calls or text messages, but there was communication.
And have you made any effort to find the location of those two phones, Alder's and Arturo's, at the time of the shooting?
Have I made an effort to locate the phones at the time of the shooting?
Have you made any effort to determine the location of the two phones when those calls were made?
I don't have the training in that area. I'd have to refer it to the guys who work in that unit.
Have you reviewed their work?
I'm in the process of going over it with them.
Did you testify before the grand jury?
Yes.
as you sit here now, what information or evidence do you have that indicates that my client was involved in the shooting of Deputy Byrd?
So based off of the investigation that we conducted, and naturally there was a lot of resources and people working on this, based off of all the information that I got, which I was told that out of all the numbers that were pulled out of the dump, those were two that looked of interest that we needed to look into further. In looking into them, the timeline of their phones in the area, I was told, matched up with the timeline on the camera footage that we have from both Deputy Byrd's camera in his car that was running and the gas station down the street. So the times that those phones were there matched up. The vehicle, the suspect vehicle that was in the picture, we had got information that Alder operated a truck with that. We executed search warrants at the house and interviewed people, and Arturo and I believe one of his roommates were in the area earlier in the night. They were on the gas station video as well. And then the interviews that I was talking about earlier that were conducted with Arturo, and there's all the information.
Okay, when you said dumps, what are you referring to?
With a phone dump?
Phone dump or tower dump?
Both have been done, but I believe, talking back to what I was just talking about, was probably a tower dump.
And you said there were, I think I heard you say they were in the area. The phones were in the area, is that right?
Yes.
And when you say in the area is defined in a search warrant, isn't it? The very first warrant that you got, let me start that over. The two search warrants that you got for Google geofence information had a circle of the area that you're talking about, right?
That's typically how the geofence work, yes.
May I approach your honor?
Yes, sir.
Defendant's Exhibit 2.
Thanks, sir.
Excuse me.
Make sure all cell phones are turned off.
Do you recognize Defendant's Exhibit 2?
Yes, sir.
And is that the location point where you see the A in the middle? Is that the site of the shooting? The approximate site?
Approximately, it's hard to tell on this one approximately.
And then there was a search area that was 500 meters, radius of 500 meters, or a circle of 1,000 meters in diameter, is that right?
Yes.
And this, the field that you see there to the right of the A is the field that Arturo indicates he was in at the time of the shooting. Is that right?
To the right of the A?
Yeah, across the street from the A there.
Yes.
And have you reviewed the dash cam video?
Yes.
And on the dash cam video, there is an individual in the field at the time of the shooting with a flashlight, isn't there?
Objection.
Overruled.
I can't sit here and say for 100% certain that there's an indication of a person in the field with a flashlight. There is some light that comes up. You can't make out if it's a flashlight or if there's even a person there. Or from what I've seen so far watching it, I've not seen it.
May I approach the witness?
Yes, sir.
Let me show you Defense Exhibit 3 and take your time. I'm going to direct you, just so you know,
Yes, sir.
to the bottom of page, oh, they're not numbered, the one that says attachment 3, probable cause affidavit, that last paragraph. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Does it indicate that on the Deputy Bird's patrol vehicle camera video that a suspect is seen in the middle of the field with a flashlight on?
It does say that.
And as soon as Deputy Bird pulls up, the flashlight in the field goes off,
That's what it says here.
and then Deputy Bird exits his patrol vehicle and 6 gunshots were heard. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Have you been to the area of the shooting?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with that area?
Yes, sir.
Have you looked at overhead aerial views of the property?
Yes, sir.
Now, so I may approach both exhibits 4 and 5.
Yes, sir.
May I stand here?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me, please, what defendants 4 and 5 are?
Looks like a Google Earth from the intersection where the gas station is.
Actually, is it an aerial view of the
Oh,
area?
yes, sir.
Okay. If you could show it to the court, the gas station that were you talking about?
It's the gas station at the intersection of Auburn Highville and Battle Bridge.
And you got surveillance video from that gas station, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And could you just circle about where the shooting occurred? Just by reference, here's the silos. Do you see the silos?
Yeah, so,
And then defendants 5, is that just a closer up view?
yes.
And is this the entrance way where the truck was backed in?
I don't think so, no.
Where do you think it is?
Thinking it's this one here because it wasn't the first dirt. It's hard to tell. That's the
Right
gather
there?
gate right there.
So it's either, you think it's the second one, if you circle it?
Yeah,
you make any determination how close it was to the tree line? From the point of the shooting until the tree line?
Did I make a determination on
Yes.
the distance? No.
Did Arturo indicate to law enforcement that he was near the tree line in the field?
I'd have to go back and check. I can't testify.
Has there been any effort made by anyone on the investigation team to determine if Mr. Arturo's phone was in the field at the time of the shooting?
The efforts of trying to pinpoint the exact locations of the phone are still underway and being worked on. As far as, I can't testify to the exact science of exactly where a phone's going to ping, whether it's off of this tower over here, this tower. I can't testify to that. That's not my area of expertise.
Have you gotten, and you may have asked it, GPS data is very precise, isn't it?
Generally, yes, sir.
Have you gotten GPS data from Arturo's phone?
If I have it, we just recently got it back. I have not had a chance to review the GPS data. And which phone are you talking? There are multiple phones.
The phone that you contend he had on that night.
So those phones we don't have the information back on. They are newer iPhones, and from what I'm told from our technical surveillance unit team, they aren't able to get into them yet. They have to wait until the company who gets into those phones does a software update, I believe.
If you had the password, can you get in?
Yep, should be able.
Arturo was clear with the officers that he's willing to cooperate with law enforcement, is that right?
He was cooperative in his interview.
Did Alder give a statement?
Yes.
What did Alder say?
Objection.
It's sustained.
Did Alder say anything that indicated that my client was involved in the shooting of Deputy Byrd?
Objection.
Overruled for the purposes of this proceeding.
No.
Did Alder specifically say that my client was not involved in the shooting?
Objection.
Overruled for the purposes of this hearing.
Did he specifically say your client was?
Did Alder say that my client was not involved in the shooting?
No.
I'm sorry?
Did Alder say Arturo was not involved in the shooting?
Correct.
It's been a while since I've read his transcript. I believe he said something about you'll have to ask him.
On the dash camera video from Deputy Byrd's patrol vehicle,
Yes, sir.
there's only one individual there at the shooting scene, is that right?
Objection.
Sustained.
Have you heard from?
Well, as to the form of the question.
On the dash camera video from Deputy Byrd's vehicle, how many individuals do you see there at the scene, right at the scene of the vehicle?
For sure, the only person that I can see is Deputy Byrd. There's the videos, the way it is, and the positioning of the vehicle. You don't see a body, or I don't want to sit here and see a shadow movement and say, oh yeah, that's a suspect right there, but it's not very clear whether it's one, two, I couldn't find something.
So you hear the shots fired, but don't see them?
Yes.
Is that correct?
So you can hear them fired in his dash cam video, and in the gas station video, you can see the muzzle flash.
In the gas station video, how many individuals do you see at the scene?
You don't. It's too far.
So you've gotten tower dumps, correct? Cell tower dumps.
Yes,
You've gotten search warrants for all the phones that you've seized, is that right?
yes.
You've got Arturo's passport, is that right?
His path, I believe so.
It was in his vehicle?
I can't tell you where it was. I believe we have it.
And you got the geofence information from Google, is that correct?
Yes.
Were you able to determine if Arturo has any criminal record?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Did you make any, do you know whether he was employed?
They work, I believe they had a roofing company, or a framing company.
Other than the video from the grocery store, the convenience store that you mentioned, and the dash camera video, do you have any other surveillance videos?
Of the actual incident, the location of the incident,
Well, I'll break it down. Of the location of the incident.
there's another video right down the street from, I believe it's Nolly Lane, of the pickup truck circling the cul-de-sac and going back. But of the incident, it's the dash cam and the gas station.
So the truck that's circling the cul-de-sac, how many people are in the truck?
Can't tell.
And Arturo indicates that later that night, Alder came and picked him up near the Neuse River, is that right?
Best I can recall, yes. I don't have an exact location, but that sounds.
And the Neuse River is up at the top of this map on just Appendix Exhibit 4, is that right?
Man.
Sure.
Yes, I believe there's a access there.
And Arturo indicated that Alder picked him up in the woods near the Neuse River and Auburn Night
That's
Club.
Auburn Night Club.
Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
And that was after, way after the shooting, when he was picked up.
Want to say timeline. What do you classify way after? I'm sorry.
That's fair. There was a period of time when Alder's phone left the scene and went back to his residence, wasn't there?
Yes.
And then Alder's phone came back to this area that's shown on Defendant's Exhibit 4 after he'd already been home, is that right?
He eventually made it back to the area, yes, but he went other places first.
But when he came back to the area is when Arturo told law enforcement that Alder picked him up.
Sustained. Well, I'm going to allow the testimony for the purposes of this proceeding, but if you could clarify where he says that or in what context he says that.
When Arturo was interviewed by law enforcement, I believe you've already said he indicated that Alder came and picked him up at that near the Neuse River, correct?
You said that, yes, and I said yes. I believe that's what happened.
If you don't know, that's fine.
I'm sorry. I don't want to testify 100%, but I believe that's right.
Has there been any cast report prepared yet?
Not yet, no, sir.
Has there been any mapping produced that shows the location of either Alder's phone or Arturo's phone, to your knowledge?
Objection. He's asked about the mapping and the technology of his phones, and this has been answered, and the detective has indicated that's not something that he has done.
I'll let him answer the question again if it's within his knowledge, but it is.
I am asking.
Has been asked and answered, but I'm going to allow it one more time for
I
clarification.
meant to ask a different question.
Yes.
My question is, have you seen a mapping of the phones?
Have I seen a mapping of the, yes, where the, initial points of where they are, but with the, what's the term? With the towers in the range, I think it's called range to tower, one of those things. I have to refer to that, but yes.
Have you provided any discovery or any of your investigative file to the state yet?
Still working on producing it, no, sir.
I'm sorry.
We're still working on gathering it all together.
But has any of it been produced to the state yet?
I don't believe so.
That's all I have, thanks.
Mr. Latour, any questions?
Very briefly, investigator, there were dozens of investigators from multiple agencies working on this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
And this is a investigation that spanned an extended period of time, fair to say?
Yes, sir.
You have not reviewed every piece of evidence in this case, have you?
No, sir.
You did not, and were not a party to the collection of every piece of evidence in this case, correct?
No, sir. Or, correct, yes.
When you are testifying today, is today's testimony to the best of your recollection?
Yes, sir.
May there be other information out there that you are not aware of as you sit here today that is within the possession of one of those dozens of law enforcement officers involved in this case?
Yes, sir.
The statements and recitation of the facts in these probable cause statements that you've been provided, you didn't write all of these, did you?
No, sir.
You have reviewed them, though, correct?
Yes, sir.
And these do not contain every piece of evidence and are summaries of bits and pieces of that evidence that has been collected by all those law enforcement agencies, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. On the date that this defendant was apprehended by law enforcement officers, where was he?
I think it was west of Winston-Salem.
And was he in a car?
Yes.
Was his brother in another car?
Yes.
In those cars with them, were there high-powered rifles, cash, and other items?
Yes.
Do you know if the defendant is in this country and was in this country at that time lawfully?
I was told he was not.
Are you aware, if we sit here today, if the defendant is under a immigration detainer from the U.S. government?
I am aware, yes.
And is he in fact under immigration detainer?
From what I was told by that, yes.
Thank you. No further questions for this hearing, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Ferguson, anything further?
Yes, Your Honor. When these dozens of officers work on this case, did they prepare written reports?
They've done supplements.
And is there some central repository for those reports?
Their supplements will all be attached to the report in our reporting system.
And the immigration detainer, have you checked at the jail, Wake County Jail, to see if there's an immigration detainer?
I was contacted by the FBI that there was. Personally, have I checked? No, I've made calls to have it checked.
That's all I have, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Latour. Thank you. You may step down, sir. Further evidence, Mr. Ferguson? All right. Very well. State have any evidence with respect to this hearing?
No testimonial evidence.
All right. Very well. All right. So no further evidence.
Your Honor, I would just ask to admit defendants 1 through 5.
Yes.
For this hearing.
For the purposes of this hearing. Mr. Latour, anything you wish to have by way of evidence, non-testimonial or otherwise?
Your Honor, if I may approach, I only have one copy. I think you may have a copy of this, Your Honor, but provide the court with a copy that I was provided with today of the immigration detainer of the defendant that was filed. It would appear to me on or about August the 18th of 2022 by the U.S. government. Other than that, I have no evidentiary presentation.
All right, very well. I'll have this marked as State's Exhibit number 1 for the purposes of this hearing. All right, Mr. Ferguson.
I'd like to be heard first with respect to a motion to compel discovery. There is a lot of electronic information that's somewhat time sensitive. This is not the first motion for discovery I filed. I think it's the third, if not, I think it's the third I've asked for, because we believe that there's evidence that's exculpatory for my client to show that he was not at the scene of the shooting. In fact, I didn't hear any evidence from Investigator Shotcott that puts my client at the actual scene, but rather it's, at least the flashlight in the field is consistent with what my client says, that he was in the field at the time of the shooting. There were telephone calls between, after the shooting, there were telephone calls between my client and his brother, because my client called his brother and to ask what happened. And the location of those two phones is critical for the defense of my client. He's been in jail now for 3 months. 3 months. And we've got no discovery, and I don't fault Mr. Latour because, as you heard, he doesn't have any discovery to produce. I'm asking the court to consider an order requiring rolling discovery.
I'm sorry, rolling?
Rolling discovery, not wait till it's all finished, but any discovery that we can get now, especially as it relates to any electronic information. There were many search warrants for phones, cell towers, cell phones, towers, and the Google data. The 2 Google searches, one, the first phase, they get the anonymized data. The second one, they get the identity of that person. And I'd like to know who that person is so I can follow up on the investigation. Because there's nothing in the search warrants that ever identifies who that phone that was found in the Google search, whose that was. Does that make sense? They only found one phone in the Google search, and if it's my client, it's going to be critical because it will put him in the field at the time of the shooting. And I need to be able to get this information to my expert to make sure that there's not additional information out there that he needs to follow up on. So I understand it's a lot of investigation. I understand it's a serious case, but I'm asking the court to order the state to require to produce whatever discoveries in existence as of today or within a certain period of time, and it rolls forward as additional information comes in.
All right.
With respect to bond, I'll just represent the court. I called the jail a week and a half ago and was told there was no detainer on the defendant. If there's a detainer, there's no need to be heard on bond. And I would just like to reserve the bond issue until I can confirm whether there's an immigration detainer.
All right, that's fine.
The court would allow me to do that. Like I said, my information was that there was not one.
All right. Mr. Latour, let's have your position with respect to a rolling discovery order.
Your Honor, I understand the concern. I believe even through the defendant's evidence that he provided today, I think that the indication would be that some of that information that they want, law enforcement is still in the process of gathering and working on themselves. And so for them to provide that information before they are fully done kind of makes it a bit difficult on them to complete their investigation. I have spoken to Investigator Shapcott and informed him, as well as the State Bureau of Investigation, who I spoke to earlier this week, about discovery in this matter. We have discussed their ability and how long they think it's going to take to get the discovery, one, in any format that is even practicable to hand over They are working on that and are making their best efforts to do that. There's some indication that they think they may be able to do that before the end of the year. I know we have homicide status hearings coming up in the middle of next month. I would ask that you not enter an order at this time, that maybe we can see what progress can be made. If there is a particular piece of information that they are asking for, I'm happy to talk to Mr. Ferguson about what it is, and if it's something that we can accommodate in a reasonable way early on, I will do my best to do that. And I think that maybe we could readdress this matter at the homicide status hearing as far as the requirement for an order for rolling discovery. But in speaking to them, I think the videos and the phone information is very voluminous and is not in any way easily transferred to our office to then do our duty to then transfer it over to the defense counsel. And that's one of the problems that they're working their way through and figuring out the best method in order to provide that information.
All right. All right. Anything further, Mr. Ferguson?
No, thank you.
All right. Well, we do have a homicide status December 15th. What I think would be appropriate by then, I understand the complexity of the forensic data related to mobile technology, and I understand there are multiple mobile devices involved in this case, and it's a time-consuming and complex process to extract that information and then also to put that information into a format that can be used by law enforcement, by the prosecutor, and by the defense. What I'd like to see by December 15th, if there has not been an exchange of some of the information that Mr. Ferguson is specifically requesting, and it seems to be a fairly narrow category of information that he's requesting, if there's not been an exchange, or at least a date certain, that we be prepared to put a plan in for some sort of rolling discovery for that specific information, based on the best estimates that the forensic evaluators for the state can provide us. I'm hesitant to speculate how long they may need to thoroughly conduct their extraction and their review of that evidence, but I think it would be reasonable to say that if we don't have some exchange of that information, or at least a date by that information would be exchanged, that the court would certainly entertain entering an order that would provide a realistic timeline for rolling discovery of the information that Mr. Ferguson is requesting. So I think that would be the best way to proceed at this moment on that issue.
Absolutely, and I would just ask that if Mr. Ferguson, if you have specific information, if you email me that, I will forward it to law enforcement and make our best efforts to make sure that happens.
Right, that's exactly what I think should happen, and so that gives us about 30 days to go through that process and see how far we get just by some cooperative exchange in that manner. With respect to the bond issue, I think at this point we'll just simply hold that matter in abeyance and leave it to Mr. Ferguson to raise the issue anew if it's something that you wish to be heard on further.
Yes, sir. I realize I've got Defendants Exhibits 4 and 5.
Yes, sir.
Not as faulty.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Are there other matters pending before the court today?
None that I'm aware of in this case,
Yes.
But other than this case, yes, Your Honor.
Right, I understand there's other business with the state unrelated to this case. All right, thank you all then. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. We'll be at ease. Bailiff, we'll be at ease for 10 minutes.
Court says these 10 minutes.